Alright, what's going on, Planeswalkers? This is Keith, and you are watching Less Magic, More Gathering. And today, we are going to be doing a full set review for Ravnica Allegiance. I've done this 3 times now. This is my 3rd recording. The first one, I was going in detail on pre-release strategies and things like that, but really, I don't play pre-release unless it's Two-Headed Giant, so I'm probably not the best guy to be giving you advice. And I was also going into pricing and things like that, but the prices on these cards are going to change a lot, especially between now and the time that the meta is really established. A lot of these cards are going to go up, a lot of them are going to go way down. There's always big hype for some cards when they first hit, especially the mythics and things. They're going to be, $15, $20, $30 coming out of pre-release, but then once everybody gets to playing and sees how the meta is going to work, they're going to plummet, and I'm going to make you guys really mad. So I'm skipping all that. I'm going to give you my opinion as a standard player, what I think of these cards. Now, whether or not that will translate to modern or legacy or your pre-release or any drafts you might do, I don't know. But I'm going to give you my opinion, and we're going to look at every single card in the set. So buckle up, hang on tight, here we go. We're going to start out here with Angel of Grace, card 001 in the set. There's a lot of talk about this card. Angel of Grace is a 5-drop, 5/4 angel, flying and flash, and when it enters the battlefield until the end of the turn, any damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. And then you can pay 6, exile it from your graveyard, and your life total becomes 10. So, like I said, there's a lot of talk and speculation that this is going to be a good card. I don't know. I mean, it is a 5/4 with flash, which is good. A 5/4 flyer for 5 is fine. Is it going to break the meta? No, probably not. It can save you sometimes if you need that kind of card, depending on what you're playing against and what your meta is with your play group and what you've got going on. I don't know. To me, it's just it's a mythic. Okay. Next, we've got Angelic Exaltation. This is a 4-drop that essentially, I think the keyword ability is Exalted. I think that's what it gives your creatures. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this has a home, and I think it's funny. You've got the different guilds: Orzhov, Azorius, Rakdos, Gruul, right? And Simic. But this has got the Boros flag. That's from last set. This one, they wanted this in last set, but they missed out. So we get it this time. Okay, it's just another card, I think. There are certain decks where this is going to be really good, but it's also pretty situational, so I don't know. It's okay. Archway Angel is a 6-drop 3/4. When it enters, you gain 2 life for each gate you control. Another card that's very constructed deck specific. It's not going to work in your limited formats probably, because you're going to have to draw a bunch of gates instead of taking other cards. So probably not going to work there. In a very specific gate-oriented deck, I'm sure it's fine. There's probably other options that are going to be in that deck though. So I don't think this will see much play. Next, we've got Arrester's Zeal. 1 white. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And then we get the first look at one of the keyword abilities that I'm sure you guys have seen on other people's spoiler videos. Addendum. You get an extra benefit if you cast these instant spells during your main phase instead of any other time. So if you cast it during your main phase, the creature gets flying as well. So you cast this during your first main phase before you attack to give something +2/+2 and flying, or you can cast it any other time to use it as a defensive mechanism or a combat check on your opponent's turn. Not bad. Next, we've got Bring to Trial. This is I don't remember the card from Guilds of Ravnica, but there's another card that's virtually the same, except it exiles a creature with toughness 4 or greater. This one does power 4 or greater. 3-drop sorcery, exile target creature, power 4 or greater. Probably good in your pre-release. It's good removal, because the whole point of your pre-release is going to be to try and find your bomb and then build around that. I know at least that much about limited. So this will help you get rid of your opponent's bomb creature that they're trying to win the game with. So not bad. Standard? Probably not. There's other options that are better. Next we've got Civic Stalwart. It is a 4-drop 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, all your creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. Pretty good for a common, especially in your limited format. I know that would be a decent card. I don't know a lot about limited. I don't play a lot. But it seems like giving all your creatures a bonus like that would be a good one. Next, we've got a 2-drop 1/3 flyer, Concordia Pegasus. Pretty basic, not going to spend much time on it. Exposed to Daylight is next. That's a 3-drop, 1 white and 2 to destroy an artifact or enchantment and scry 1. Another card that I just don't need to spend much time on. Next one is Forbidding Spirit. 2 whites and 1. When Forbidding Spirit enters the battlefield, until your next turn, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures. So kind of a tax that your opponents will have to pay to be able to attack you, and that lasts until your next turn. So on your opponent's next turn, they can't attack you unless they pay. So not too bad. Hazda Officer is a 3-drop, 2 and a white for a 3/2 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Another one I don't need to spend much time on. Hero of Precinct 1 is a 2-drop, 1 and a white for a 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token. This, I feel like, is another card that belongs with Boros. This is a really good way to get this out early and then start casting all those Boros creatures and creating quite an army. Would probably work pretty well in a deck with the one that makes angels, the enchantment that makes your tokens into angels. Get this out early, start casting multicolor spells, and then get your enchantment out there and start pumping out angels. I think it may find its way into some decks in Standard. Probably won't be super awesome, but it'll probably be pretty decent. Impassioned Orator is a 2-drop 2/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. So this is going to pair well with something like a Johnny's Welcome and a Johnny's Pridemate. You know, it's going to give you just another source of life gain, and I think that's going to become really annoying. So look for that card in the white life gain deck, because I think it has a good place. Next we've got Justicar's Portal. 2-drop instant. Exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. It gains first strike until end of turn. So this is a good defensive card, and it's also a way to multiply your enter the battlefield effects. You know, there's all kinds of decks that have creatures in there that have enter the battlefield effects that are going to be beneficial. So this is an easy way to reuse those. If you've got a Ravenous Chupacabra out there, and you use your Justicar's Portal to exile it and return it to the battlefield and destroy something, you know, it works well. So that's just one example, but there's a ton of creatures with enter the battlefield effects, so not too bad. Knight of Sorrows is a 5-drop, 4 and a white for a 3/3. It can block an additional creature each combat, and it has Afterlife 1. I know that this artwork was part of the intro video they did on Arena. They used this character. I feel like they should have put this character on a card that's not just a common, because it's really cool. But there it is. Lumbering Battlement. This one's pretty cool. 5-drop 4/5 with Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile any number of non-token creatures you control until it leaves the battlefield. And then it gets +2/+2 for each card exiled with it. And it gets that permanently. Obviously until it dies, but it doesn't say until end of turn. So it gets that +2/+2 while those cards are exiled. And then once it does die or leave the battlefield, then those cards come back into play, and you get any of the enter the battlefield effects over again. So another one that I don't know if it's really going to break the format or anything, but it could see some play. Not too shabby. Next, we've got Ministrant of Obligation, a 3-drop 2/1 with Afterlife 2. Pretty basic, but another keyword here I didn't discuss on the last one. Afterlife, and then followed by a number. So you're going to have Afterlife 1, Afterlife 2, Afterlife 4. Whatever that number is, you create that many 1/1 white and black spirit creature tokens with flying when they die. So, pretty cool. Not bad. This is not, I don't know if this is really uncommon worthy. A 3-drop 2/1 that creates 2/1/1s, but in something like a limited format, any creature that leaves stuff behind when it dies, especially when it leaves things behind that have evasion, is pretty good. So keep your eyes open for that one. Prowling Caracal is a 2-drop 3/1 vanilla creature. Not going to spend any time on that. Rally to Battle is a 4-drop instant, 3 and a white. Creatures you control get +1/+3 until end of turn. Untap them. So this is a very good defensive type card. It gives all your creatures that +1/+3, big boost to your defenses. So in something like a limited format where you might need to be able to stick around for that one extra turn just to get your bomb out there, or maybe you've almost got them dead and they think they're going to be able to take you out, then you can cast this and untap everything and surprise the crap out of them. So not a bad card in that format. Next, we've got Resolute Watchdog. I like this one. 1-drop 1/3 with Defender. You pay 1. Target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Pay 1 and sacrifice it. And it gives a creature indestructible. I think this is almost a direct replacement for Dauntless Bodyguard. The nice thing about Dauntless Bodyguard is there's no pay associated with it. This one costs you 1, but it's also a better defender, and it lets you choose any of your creatures instead of just one that you've chosen when it entered the battlefield. So this may be an okay replacement for that. The power on the Dauntless Bodyguard is better than this, but this has got a lot better defense, so there's a better chance this will stick around. Sentinel's Mark is a 2-drop 1 and a white for an enchantment. Aura. It has Flash, enchanted creature gets +1/+2 and Vigilance. Addendum gives you, like I said before, a benefit if you cast it during your main phase. So if you do, the enchanted creature gains lifelink until end of turn. So this is another one that's good for, even though it has that addendum ability, you're probably better off using this as a defensive combat trick, flashing this in on your opponent's turn. But, I don't know. It's just a card, I think. Next, we've got Sky Tether. Sky Tether is a 1-drop aura. When enchanted creature has Defender and loses flying. So, this is one that you may want to look at in your pre-release, just because the whole purpose, the thing you're trying to do is get creatures with some kind of evasion. So you're definitely going to see people playing flyers. You can put this on somebody's flyer, and it's going to lose that ability, and it's also going to make it so that it can't attack. So one to keep your eyes peeled for. Next, we've got Smothering Tithe. This is a 1 white and 3 enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure. So again, I don't know how good. This is probably not going to be very good in your limited format, but it does possibly give you some mana ramp. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know about this one. This is one, we'll keep our eyes on it, and we'll come back to it later, some other time, some other day, some other month, and see how it's done. It's more of that tax effect like we've seen on some of the other cards in the set, but will it catch on? Will it be a good thing? I don't know. Spirit of the Spires is 3 and a white for a 2/4 flying spirit. Gives other creatures you control with flying +0/+1. So if you're building that blue-white flyers deck, or if you're at your pre-release and you've got some flyers, this may be one to put in there just to give you that little bump in defensive ability. But just a card. There's a lot of just cards in all these sets, not just this one. But there's also some very exciting cards that I know we're going to get to later, so just hang with me. Summary Judgment, 2-drop instant. It deals 3 damage to target tapped creature. If you do it during your main phase, it deals 5 damage to that creature instead. So this is not bad. It's not a bad card. White has that, attacking or defending creature or tapped creature. It's very specific on when you can deal damage. Whereas with red, you can usually just puke out your damage spells. White usually has some kind of restriction. But this is not bad. Just a card, right? Next, we've got Syndicate Messenger. 3 and a white for a 2/3 flying bird with Afterlife 1. Not too bad. This would probably be okay in your sealed environment, just because it's got the evasion, it leaves a creature behind. It may end up being some kind of an all-star, and I just don't see it. But it seems like it would be good in that format. 10th District Veteran is a 3-drop 2/3 with Vigilance. Whenever it attacks, you untap another target creature you control. So it has Vigilance and can essentially give another creature you control Vigilance. So that's a good ability. I like it. Tithe Taker is a 2-drop 2/1 human soldier. This is a rare. During your turn, spells your opponents cast cost 1 more, and abilities your opponents activate cost 1 more to activate, unless they are mana abilities. Afterlife 1. So this one, I don't know. I want to like it just because it's a more of that tax effect, and I like punishing my opponents. But this one just feels like it's, with it being only on a 2/1 body, it's so easy to remove. I just don't think it's going to end up being worth it. Next, we've got Twilight Panther. I love the art on this one. Take a look at that real quick. I'll give you a second. 3, 2, 1. Good. Alright. It's 1 white for a 1/2 cat spirit, and you can pay a black to give it death touch until end of turn. So it's not bad for going up against like an aggro type deck that's trying to come at you. You can give this thing death touch and get rid of any of those early creatures, and it's also got that 2 toughness, which can sometimes be just enough to get you over the hump. Unbreakable Formation is a 3-drop instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. If you do it during your main phase, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain Vigilance until end of turn. So this can be really good in a few different ways. If somebody's trying to do a board wipe or something like that, boom, you've got the answer. And then also, if you're just needing to get that last attack in, but maybe your opponent is also threatening lethal, you can play this during your main phase, get that last attack in, and still keep up defenses just in case you need them. So, not a bad card. Next, we've got Watchful Giant. This is a 6-drop 3/6, 5 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white human creature token. This is probably good in your limited type formats, but it's too expensive for standard and doesn't really do enough. There's others that are going to, I think, be better than this. So, it's a card. It's cool art, too. Look at this big dude. Can you imagine if people like this really existed? That'd be freaking crazy. We'd have to redo everything we've got as far as infrastructure is concerned, because this guy couldn't walk through a subway. Massive. I love it. All right, now we're moving on to blue. I hate blue. I like blue in certain situations. I've 100% decided that if I'm not playing a ranked game on Arena, if somebody plays a counterspell, I'm out. I don't even stick around to play. If they don't want to play Magic, I won't play with them. All right, that's my rant for the day. So moving on to blue, let's see what kind of cool stuff we can run into. This one, it's pretty cool. We've got the different guilds watermarks on here. So this is from, what is this? Yeah, Azorius? Is that what that is? I don't know. Simic on this one. It's pretty neat that they did that. So Arrester's Admonition. Arrester's Admonition. 3-drop, instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. If you do it during your main phase, you also get to draw a card. So this is kind of a blink of an eye, kicked combo, little different way of doing it. I think that in reality, blink of an eye is infinitely better than this, because it gives you the option of always casting as an instant, and it also gives you the option of being a 2-drop if you need it to be, just to get something that's going to destroy you off the field. But you can also pay that 1 extra in comparison to this one to be able to draw a card and still do it at instant speed. So I don't see this getting into play over something like Blink of an Eye, but it's a card. It's in the set. Next, we've got Benthic Biomancer. This is a 1-drop 1/1. It has Adapt 1, and you only have to pay 2. So on turn 2, you can put a +1/+1 creature on this, and whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on this card, you draw a card, then discard a card. So I think it just kind of gets put into the new Merfolk. There's going to be a whole new Merfolk deck. It's going to include a lot of these new cards from Simic. There's some really good upgrades to that deck. And this one may find its way in. I don't know if this is better than the Unblockable, but this one is going to help you get through cards better. And that ability, whenever the 1/1 counter is put on, you draw a card, then discard a card. That's 100% of the time. It's not only when you adapt. So the Merfolk deck is obviously going to be distributing a lot of 1/1 counters, and every time you do that to this card, you get to draw and discard. So you get to loot through your deck quite a bit and really get to what you want, which makes me think it's going to find its way into that deck. I guess we'll just wait and see. Next, we've got a 5-drop, 4 and a blue for a 3/3 flying elemental. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I'm thinking limited for this one. Probably not going to make it into standard at that cost, but in limited, being able to tap your opponent's best creature and get a 3/3 out there that has an evasion ability, it's really good. So probably not in standard, probably in limited. Next we got Clear the Mind, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library and then draw a card. So if you're playing against, this is really sideboard and specific. I think most of the time you're not going to want this. But if you end up against a mill deck or something, you may want to put this in there. It's okay. It's a card. Code of Constraint is a 3-drop instant with addendum. The target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Draw a card. If you cast it during your main phase, tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its next untap step. This is another one that's just kind of a card. I don't see it seeing play, but it may, I don't know. I don't think so. Meh, skip it. Coral Commando, Merfolk Wizard, 3-drop, 3/2, vanilla. Nothing to talk about here. Essence Capture is 2 blue for an instant counter target creature spell and put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. This is another one that I think is going to be in that Merfolk deck for sure. It lets you counter an opponent's creature spell, and then you get to add a counter to some of these creatures that have that addendum, or adaptability, and have a benefit when they get a counter. So I see Essence Capture being used somewhere. Keep your eyes peeled. You'll probably see it. You will see this again. Next, we've got Eyes Everywhere. I love the art on this card, too. Look at this. All the eyeballs. This dude's freaking out. 2 and a blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, and then you can pay 6 to exchange control of Eyes Everywhere and target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only time you could cast a sorcery. So this is, you put this out there, and then you get to scry through your deck at the beginning of every turn, and at the opportune moment, you're able to switch control. This is any non-land permanent. So anything. Somebody plays a Teferi, you pay 6. They can't counter it at that point because there's no more disallow. And you get to exchange control. Now that's going to give them the option to scry, and I guess that they can pay this ability as well, right? They can pay this ability and switch back. So this is a weird card, man. I didn't even think about it that way. You probably don't want to take somebody's Teferi unless it's able to be ultimated. They get it up to ultimate status. You switch control and then ultimate it. That's an option. Creatures with haste, maybe, because it doesn't give creatures haste, it doesn't say. Or something with a sacrifice ability that you can pay for. I don't know. That's a weird card. This is my first time going through the set. I didn't make it this far in the first couple videos, so It's a weird card. Somebody's going to find a way to abuse this, but it's pretty cool. Fairy Duelist is a 2-drop, 1/2 fairy rogue with flash and flying. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Skip it. Gateway Sneak is a 3-drop, 1/3. When a gate enters the battlefield under your control, Gateway Sneak can't be blocked this turn. Whenever Gateway Sneak deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So, if you combine this with some of the other gate-oriented cards, you're really starting to get into the territory where you're able to draw a ton of cards. And I think this is going to be one of the cards that's going to help that deck. If it ever does become something, I think this will be in the build that does. Just because you're going to need to be able to draw things and get to those gates that are going to help you in the long run. Now, will that happen? Will that deck ever become a deck? Probably not. You'll see it on Arena every once in a while because there's like 3 people in there that are creative, and they'll come up with something that uses those gate cards to make a deck that works. But as far as actual competitive, I don't think so. But it is part of that gate deck that will inevitably be around in some format or another, or some form or another. Next, we've got Humongulous. It's a 5-drop, 2/5 homunculus with hexproof. Pretty basic, you know. Homunculus are really weird. Get on the internet and look up homunculus. You'll run into some really weird crap. Probably weirder than this. But this is another card that maybe in limited is fine. Standard play probably won't happen. Because for 5 mana, you could wait 1 turn and get Carnage Tyrant, which is way better. So, it's a card. Mass Manipulation. 4 blues and 2 X. Gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. This is probably like a one of in some decks. Just to, you hold on to it until you've got a ton of mana, and you can really just devastate your opponent by taking a lot of or all their stuff. Pretty cool card. Will it see standard play? Maybe. In a competitive deck? Probably not. Next, we've got another Mythic here. 3 and 2 blues for a 4/5 octopus. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2/02 blue illusion creatures that have to be sacrificed. No, whenever this creature blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Those are different illusions than I was thinking about. So that's neat. And then it has hexproof as long as you control an illusion. So it has hexproof when it first enters because those 2 blue illusion creatures come out too. I don't know. I want to like it, but I don't know if I do. I think it's just a card. I don't think it's worth being a mythic, and I think there's better options. But if I'm wrong, you feel free to get down there in that comment section and let me know. Persistent Petitioners. 2-drop, 1/3. This card is annoying. You pay 1 and tap it. Target player mills 1. Tap 4 untapped advisors you control. Notice these are human advisors. And target player mills 12. And a deck can have any number of cards named Persistent Petitioners. So, look me in the eyes right now. If you think you're going to be playing against this deck, and you are running green, Gaia's Blessing, you're welcome. I played against this on Arena. Somebody had Persistent Petitioners. They had some of the copy spells. It didn't work. It didn't work against me, and they quit after the second time they did this because they hit a Gaia's Blessing and everything got shuffled in. They had no other game plan. So being able to make somebody mill 12 is really good. And I'm sure that the person that I was playing against, it was probably the first time they had went up against somebody that had Gaia's Blessing in their deck. So it was just an unfortunate turn of events for him, but it's fun, Is it going to be competitive? No, probably not. I don't think so. But it's more fun. Annoy your friends. Persistent petitioners. Precognitive Perception is a 5-drop instant to draw 3 cards. And if you cast it during your main phase, you scry 3 and then draw 3 cards. This one I could see ending up in... Is this better than being able to draw 2 cards for 4 twice? Probably. But is the 5 mana cost what's going to put this into the point where it can't really be played? That's my assumption, is that in that control build, you don't want something taking the place of that 5-drop, where you want to be playing your Teferi every turn, or a Ral if you're playing the red, white, blue. So I think that this one is just missed the mark a hair. It'll see some play occasionally, I think, but especially in like the mill deck where you've got your Psychic Corrosion, then this is really good because it's gonna let you draw more, and you get to scry, so you can really see what's coming up. But typical control build, I think it's just off a hair. Next, we've got Prying Eyes, a 6-drop instant. Draw 4 cards, then discard 2 cards. Again, I think it's just too expensive. Being able to draw 4 cards for 6 is infinitely worse than being able to draw 7 cards for 7. 7, right? 7 or 8. But even at 8, I think that's better. So, Prying Eyes, meh. What do we got here? We got a Terramander. Is a 1-drop, 1/1 flying Salamander Drake. Simic. They've got so many fun creatures. This one has Adapt 4, but you have to pay 8. So I think that Adapt cost is going to be... It does cost 1 less to activate for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So you can get the cost down, but I think with it being only a 1/1 to begin with, there's so much removal that can handle this before you get to Adapt. And without it being a Merfolk or something like that, I just don't think it's going to make it into a deck. I did play against somebody that was running this on Arena the other day, but I just killed it. They never had the chance to adapt it. And I think that's what's going to hurt this card. Quench is a 2-drop instant. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. Moving right along. Sage's Row Savant is a 2-drop 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get to scry 2. That's okay, right? Nothing groundbreaking there. It's not crazy good. It's not crazy bad. Man, I keep getting this warning. Senate Courier is a 3-drop 1/4 flying bird, and you can pay 1 and a white, and it gains vigilance until end of turn. That defense of 4 is, that's decent. Now it's not gonna break into standard and be a meta-breaking card, but in your limited format, that 4 defense is pretty good, especially on a flyer. Not bad. And being able to give it vigilance, if you're in these colors, it's not a bad card. Shimmer of Possibility is a 2-drop sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is okay. Again, it's not probably going to be a card that's going to break into standard and change the game, but it's not a bad card either. So, being able to use this... What's the other one? It's not no, I don't know. There's another one that you look at the top 3, pick 1. This is look at the top 4, pick 1. Sorcery speed, so that kind of hurts it a little bit. But it's not bad. Skatewing Spy is a 4-drop 2/3 with Adapt 2. You have to pay 6 for that, though. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. So this is a pretty cool card, especially if you're in an Adapt deck or you're going to be able to distribute a lot of those counters. If you're looking through your pre-release pack and you find yourself with a lot of creatures that have this adaptability that doesn't cost a lot, and you can get something like this to follow those up with, this may be something that'll work really well in... You hear my cat growl? In limited. It's expensive to adapt this one. Costs 6. So, I don't know. Nothing to write home to Mom about. Next, we've got Skittering Eel. This is a fish crab. Simic, you're fantastic people. 4-drop 3/3 with Adapt 2. Not a lot to talk about there either, other than the fact that it's a fish crab. Slime Bind is a 2-drop enchantment with Flash, and enchanted creature gets -4, -0. The fact that this has Flash, I think, makes this 1,000 times better. Being able to flash this in on your opponent's turn, like I said, I just think that that one key word right there, having Flash, makes this card worth looking at. Sphinx of Foresight. We don't see a lot of Sphinxes that are really like standard playable, right? They're always too expensive and don't really do quite enough. Let's take a look at this one. 4-drop 4/4 flyer. That's good right there. Let's see what it does. You may reveal this card from your opening hand. If you do, you scry 3 at the beginning of your first upkeep. And at the beginning of every upkeep, you scry 1. This one I like. Is it going to be standard playable? Maybe? Does Control want to be able to scry every turn? And do they want to they like to be able to do things that don't cost anything, so that's good. And having a 4/4 flyer just in case. I think the mono blue tempo deck maybe goes with something like this, just so that they can get that, they can set up those first few turns, because they want to be able to do that. This one might not be bad. Keep an eye out for Sphinx of Foresight. Swirling Torrent is our next card. A 6-drop sorcery. And you can choose one or both. Put target creature on top of its owner's library, or return target creature to its owner's hand. So if you choose, I don't know why you wouldn't choose both, unless there's not a legal target for both of them. But one of them goes on the library and the other one in the hand. It does cost 6. I think that's what kills that card. But it's cool. Thought Collapse. 3-drop instant. Counter target spell. Its controller mills 3. Why isn't mill a keyword yet? Let's talk about that for a minute. Everybody knows what mill is. Why not make it a keyword? Wizards, make it a dang keyword. Alright? Alright. Counter spell, mill 3. This is probably going to be, I mean, it's a must include in that mill deck, right? You guys have seen it if you've played Arena any few times at all. Somebody's running mill, and this is going to replace Sinister Sabotage in that particular deck. That's probably about the only place where this is better than something like Sinister Sabotage or Cancel, maybe even. Because sometimes this can hurt you. If you end up against a Golgari or something like that, then this isn't going to benefit you necessarily over those other cards. So, but in the mill deck, it's definitely in there. Veridity Circle is a 3-drop enchantment, 2 and a blue. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. This is kind of feels like it is a counter to the Merfolk deck. You put this out, and then all the stuff that they're trying to do, you know, tapping to draw cards, tapping to add counters, it just puts that to bed. There's other decks that do the same thing, but that's the one that came to my brain just now. So being able to draw cards every time they tap one of their creatures, that's pretty good. And it also lets you tap a non-flying creature for 5. That's pretty expensive. But I don't know. Not going to go into standard and change the meta, but in the right situation, it's not bad. Alright, let's look at this new wall. 2-drop 0/4 Defender. When it enters the battlefield, target player mills 4. I guess that's okay in the mill deck. If you're playing the Drown Secrets and you want to be able to, you play that, they mill 2, then it enters the battlefield, they mill 4 more. That's always good. Outside of that, I mean, there's a lot of these cards that revolve around milling, and they're only going to go in that one deck. So, but also having something like this with like the box topper. I'm sure we'll get to that later. There's the buy a box promo. The Haunt of Hightower gets a +1/+1 counter every time your opponent puts a card in a graveyard. So being able to play that and then drop this to add 4 counters, I guess that's an option too. That's a deck that I'm going to build. I haven't done it yet. It's not on the interwebs, but I will be. I like the Haunt of Hightower, even though it just dies to a lightning strike if you don't have any way to get counters on it right away. But it's going to be one of the cards that I'm going to build around to begin the whole cycle here. So this might be a good card to put in there. And obviously it's a good defender. Windstorm Drake is a 5-drop 3/3 flyer. Other creatures you control with flying get a +1/+0. So, okay. There's other things that I think are better and aren't on a body. Like, it's not one with the wind. It's the enchantment that gives all your flyers +1/+1. That's better than this. There's a lot less chance that it's going to get removed, and there's other 5-drops that are going to be better flyers than this one. So, I just don't think that this one quite hits the mark. Alright, let's get another drink before we go into black here. We're going to get to see some new abilities here, so that'll be fun. Awaken the Erstwhile is a 5-drop sorcery. Each player discards all the cards in their hand, then creates that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. That's pretty cool. Especially against your control. If you can get this to resolve and they have to discard all their cards, they don't want 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. That's not what they're trying to do. So getting their hand emptied is going to benefit you immensely. Outside of that, is this awesome? Nah, I don't know. Probably not, unless you're trying to create a bunch of zombies, if that's going to benefit you. But using this, maybe in a sideboard situation against control, getting their hand emptied is going to benefit you unspeakably. And giving them black zombie creature tokens is not really going to be a big deal in most situations. So, next we've got Bankrupt in Blood. This is another one that I love the artwork. I don't know if all these that I've said, man, I love that artwork, if they're all the same artist. I'll have to look at that. Can you read that? I can't either. Seb McCannon? I have to look it up. Look up the artist for this. It's pretty cool. Bankrupt in Blood is a 2-drop sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sack 2 creatures to draw 3 cards. Maybe in your black-green tokens, black-green saplings, something like that. This would be okay, just to refill your hand. But I don't know, sacking 2 creatures usually hurts, but in that particular situation where you've created creatures so that they can be sacrificed, this is probably okay. Let you draw 3, it's not bad. Blade Juggler here is a 5-drop 3/2. This first card we're getting to see with Spectacle. So the way Spectacle works is, if your opponent has taken damage this turn, you can cast it for its Spectacle cost. And then sometimes they will have different abilities depending if you pay the Spectacle cost. So this one's a 5-drop 3/2. You can cast it for a Spectacle cost of 3, and then when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. So being able to cast this for 5, I don't think is worth it. If you can cast it for 3, it's not a bad card. So I just don't know. I don't know. I'm going to say it probably won't see much play. Just because what else is in that 3-drop slot that would be in the deck where this is? There may be some better options. But another card with cool art. It's a card. It's a common, so whatever. Blade Brand is a 2-drop instant. Target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn, and you get to draw a card. I could see people using this just for the draw a card ability, because black is usually not known for card draw. So being able to pay 2, draw a card, sometimes that's just worth it. Again, I don't know that it's going to be necessarily standard playable, especially if you're trying to be competitive at all. But it does give black some card draw, and it gives you that death touch ability if you need it. So maybe something to look at when you're doing some deck building and testing. Next, we've got Blood Mist Infiltrator. This is a 3-drop 3/1. Whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature, and if you do, it can't be blocked. So back in the same deck with this token deck over here, this might be a good one. Being able to get through for 3 instead of, maybe you've got a Saproling token. So being able to sack that and get through for 3, it's not a bad trade-off. Nah, it's a card. Carrion Imp is a 4-drop 2/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile a creature card from a graveyard, any graveyard, and if you do, you gain 2 life. This one is probably more like a limited card. It's common, so having the 2/3 flyer for 4 is not great, but being able to exile a creature from your opponent's graveyard and gain 2 life, sometimes that's just what you need to hold off long enough to get your bomb out there. So not too shabby. Catacomb Crocodile is a 5-drop 3/7 vanilla creature. Yeah, there's not a lot to say about it. Big time defense. Too expensive for standard, but might be okay in limited. Clear the Stage is a 5-drop instant. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you can return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is okay. It seems kind of expensive. I think 5 for 5 you could play something similar like your Eldest Reborn. This, and you get more benefit from it. But I guess Eldest Reborn lets your opponent choose the target. This, you choose the target to get -3/-3. So I don't know. I think I would have to see a deck list to know whether or not this would be better than some other alternative in comparison. So, I don't know. It might be a card. It's definitely a card. Consigned to the Pit is a 6-drop sorcery. Destroy target creature. Consigned to the Pit deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. There's just so much other removal that's better than this in standard. So it definitely won't see play there. But in your limited format, if this is the only bit of removal that you get, it's definitely worth putting in your deck just so that you have some removal, because removal is important in that format. Outside of limited, this is not going to see play anywhere else. Cry of the Carnarium is a 3-drop sorcery. All creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. And if a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. I'm sure that there are situations where this card is fine and it's going to do a specific job, but it's very narrow. So I think that there's other options that are going to be better than Cry of the Carnarium. But again, in limited, if this is what you get as removal, then okay, that's fine, I guess, right? But in standard, I just think there's better options. Unless the meta changes and we see a situation where this card would shine, I don't think it'll see much play. Dead Revels? How do you say it? I don't know. Is a 4-drop sorcery with Spectacle 2, so if your opponent's taking damage, you can cast it for only 2. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So this is similar to Find Finality in the cost and ability. I think Find Finality has more flexibility, so it's going to end up being a better card than Dead Revels. Right? Next, we've got Big Hero 6. No, what is that? That's a Thrall. Okay, my bad. That's my bad. My bad, Disney. Debtor's Transport is a 6-drop 5/3 with Afterlife 2. As a common, in limited, this is probably okay. It's a big meaty creature that's going to leave something behind when it dies. It's probably not that bomb you're searching for, but if this is one of the creatures that ends up in your deck, it's probably going to be okay. Drill Bit, this is a cool artwork here too. This is a 3-drop sorcery with Spectacle, 1 black, so you can pay only 1 black if your opponent's taking damage. Target player reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. So again, it's kind of situational. The nice thing about this is, what's the card? Thoughtseize? Is that the one? It's essentially a Thoughtseize if your opponent's taking any damage. And that card's really good, right? So that must make this one good? Typically, I guess that's how you should look at it. In the right deck, this is a good card. Font of Agonies is a 1-drop rare enchantment. Whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. And then you can pay 2, remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies to destroy target creature. This is another one that's very specific on the deck that it has to go in, because you have to have cards in your deck that activate that ability. If you are in the right deck, I think this is a really good card. We've got to think what abilities are out there that make it so you can pay life to do things. This may end up being more of a modern or another format type card. I'm not sure. I don't play those formats. I play one modern deck, and it doesn't require any life being paid for anything. So it's very, very, very niche. But in the right deck, I'm sure it's a wonderful card. Wonderful. And the artwork's cool. Grotesque Demise is a 3-drop instant. Exile target creature, power 3 or less. Again, I just think there's better removal. If you get this in limited, if you get it in your pre-release, then it is removal, and that's good. There's better out there, though. Gutter Bones is a 1 black. It's a 1-drop. Enters the battlefield tapped. It's a 2/1. You can pay 2 and return it from your graveyard to your hand, only if your opponent has taken or lost life this turn. So again, this is one of those cards that it's got to be in the right deck with the right stuff around it. This could be a really good card. But overall, typically, if it's not in that one deck where you've got things like the one where whenever a non-token creature dies, you create a 2/2 zombie. That deck. That's the very specific deck that this has to go in. Otherwise, it's just a 2/1 that can come back and die again. Ill-Gotten Inheritance. This is an interesting card. A 4-drop enchantment. It's a common. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So if you've got situations where you need to be gaining life, or you benefit from gaining life, and you're in black, this is a fine card. I like the art. Cool little coins falling all over the place, but who put them up? Who put them up to let them fall? I don't know. It wasn't that guy, because he's confused. And then you can pay 6 and sacrifice it. It deals 4 damage to an opponent, and you gain 4 life. So I think that this is probably a okay card in a limited format. It's probably not going to find its way into much standard stuff. I have it in my deck on Arena, but that's because I like to gain life in that deck. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's good enough to really break the format or anything, but depending on what cards you have and what your deck's trying to do, it may be worth throwing in there just to get that 2-point swing every turn. Next, we've got Noxious Grudian. It's a 3-drop 2/2 with Death Touch. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Good removal here, so in limited, this is going to be fine. Standard, probably not going to make it. Orzhov Enforcer is a 2-drop 1/2 with Death Touch. It also has Afterlife 1. Even though it's a 1/2, this card is infinitely better than Noxious Grudian. I like that they're right here next to each other, so I can explain why. Obviously, 1 less to cast. It has Afterlife 1, so when it dies, it's going to leave something behind. And even though it's only got 1 power, they both have Death Touch, so the power doesn't really matter. Unless you're focusing on giving your creatures trample, unless that's the specific ability that you're trying to get on here so that they can kill multiple creatures, it's not going to matter at all. So, Orzhov Enforcer, infinitely better than Noxious Grudian, and may even find some play. Orzhov Racketeers is a 5-drop 3/2 human rogue. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and it also has Afterlife 2. So, this is another one that in Limited is pretty good. You know, if you can get it through to do some damage that your opponent has to discard, and then when it does die, it leaves behind 2 flyers. Outside of that, it's probably not worth looking at. Pestilent Spirit is a 3-drop 3/2 Menace and Death Touch, and it makes your instant and sorcery spells have Death Touch. So what's that mean? It means that shocks can kill Goltas. It means that something like a kicked fight with fire can wipe the board. It means a lot of things. I think this has to go in the Black-Red Burn, just because it makes those spells so much more potent. Yeah, that card's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, I think this will be a good card. I think that Black-Red Burn deck is going to be a thing. I think it will probably end up being a competitive standard deck. And I think the Pestilent Spirit will be in that deck. Moving right along. Remember I said that. I want credit. Plague White is a 2-drop 2/1. Whenever it becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So, early game stuff, this is probably fine and limited. Standard, less. But still okay. I mean, I think with the right, against the right opponent and the right deck, this is fine. Typically, I don't think it's going to do what you want it to, but it's a card. Priest of Forgotten Gods is a 2-drop 1/2. This one's a rare as well. You can tap it and sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add 2 black and draw a card. So, wow, lots going on there, right? It's the first time I've read this card. It's pretty cool. So, for 2 mana, you get a 1/2 body. And then, obviously, you have to have a build around this that's going to allow you to sacrifice other creatures. But when you do, any number of target players each lose 2 life. Maybe you're going to benefit from losing life. So that's the way, with the way that's worded, you can target yourself, you can target your opponent, whatever you want to do. You probably wouldn't want to sacrifice yourself because it's going to require that you sacrifice another creature. So if you're in a multiplayer game, it's going to let you pick and choose who you do damage to and make sacrifice creatures, things like that. And then you also get to add 2 black and draw a card. So that's a lot of benefit from sacrificing 2 creatures, especially if you can find a way to start pumping out Saprolings and things like that. I think this will end up in a Golgari Saproling deck, probably being played more on Arena than it will be at any kind of competitive scene, but that's a really cool card that'll make its way into that deck. Next, we've got Rakdos Trumpeter. It's a 2-drop 1/3 with Menace, and you can pay 3 in a red, and it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Lots of cards like this in the world of Magic the Gathering. This one's not necessarily that special. It's common though, so it's not supposed to be, right? Next, we've got Spawn of Mayhem. This one I've heard a lot about. Everybody's running their mouth about this one. So, 4-drop 4/4, or a 3-drop 4/4 if you pay the Spectacle cost, which is really, I think a lot of people have underestimated how easy it is to activate Spectacle. I mean, it's very simple, and there's a lot of cards, especially like in the new set, that activate Spectacle for you. So, but the casting cost difference on this one is only 1. Whatever. At the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player. That's you too, activating your Spectacle costs for the rest of the turn. And then, if you have 10 or less life, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So, it activates your Spectacle for you, and then once you get down below 10, it's going to start to give you a benefit back for that, making this thing bigger. It's already a 4/4 flyer with trample, so you start to pump that thing up, and it can end a game for you if your opponent can't get rid of it. If you run into this in your pre-release pack, it's probably that bomb you're looking for. So, pretty cool card. Spire Mangler is a 3-drop 2/1 flash flyer. When it enters the battlefield, target creature with flying you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this is a good combat trick type card. If you've already got a bunch of flyers and stuff in your pre-release kit and you're working on trying to make them better and you run into a Spire Mangler, it's probably worth doing. Because it can only target a creature with flying, obviously, but it's going to allow you to get more damage through that way. Or maybe they block it with a creature that would normally not die, and you can flash this guy in and take care of it, something like that. You know how combat tricks work. I'm trying to figure out what the art is. To me, it looks like a gnome. Like, here's his little gnome hat, and his mouth's open, and the eyeball here. But I think it's some kind of insect chasing this bird. Like a big dragonfly. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, Thirsting Shade is a 1-drop 1/1 with lifelink. Pay 3, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Pretty basic, right? I don't need to spend any time on it. Undercity Scavenger is a 4-drop 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and scry 2. So in the right deck, again, this is a pretty cool card. It can come in as a 5/5 and let you scry 2 for 4. Limited format, that's definitely worth doing. Undercity's Embrace is a 3-drop instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. So that's an ability that's been on a few cards now. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, then something else happens. So this one's probably pretty good in limited. You know, it forces your opponent to get rid of something. The problem is, and the reason this will never see standard play, is that it lets your opponent choose what they're sacrificing. So, whatever. Vindictive Vampire is a 4-drop 2/3. Whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. So, it's fine. It's fine. In limited, again, this one's probably pretty good, just because it's going to help you keep that life total up. You've got to stick around long enough to get to that bomb that you were looking for, right? That's all. That's the whole. From what I understand, that's the whole goal in a limited format, is to just stick around until you can hit your bombs, and that'll help you do it. So not bad. Standard, no, thank you. Got a reprint here of Act of Treason. I love the art on this. Look at this dude. Superhero. He's about ready to lop this dude's armor-plated head off. Everybody, I mean, you probably know Act of Treason. 3-drop, take a creature, and then use one of your sacrifice outlets to get rid of it, right? Otherwise, they get it back. Yeah, I like it. Amplifier is a 4-drop 1/1 elemental creature. Look at this art. Awesome. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Until your next turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that card's toughness. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Man, for 4, I guess in the right deck, this thing's crazy, right? You put it in a Gruul deck, and you've got a bunch of big meaty creatures, then that makes this... when I first started reading it, I was thinking like a mono red deck, where all you've got is little weenies. But if you put this in a Gruul deck where you've got bigger, meatier creatures, this thing gets crazy. If you can find a way to give it trample, or flying, or something like that, I like it. Will it be in standard? I don't know. It's so hard to predict the meta. Because, like, I can think of decks that I've built that have been really good, but they haven't been considered meta decks. They haven't been on the Pro Tour. How would they have done if they were? I don't know. It never happened. So, So to try and predict the meta is impossible, I think. Will this particular card be good enough to make it into some decks? Probably so. I like it. Burn Bright is a 3-drop instant. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Very basic, moving right along. Combat tricks. Burning Tree Vandal is a 3-drop 2/1 with Riot. This is our first example of the Riot ability. Riot makes it so that when that creature enters the battlefield, it either has haste or a 1/1 counter on it. Now, one thing that I have learned is that these stack. So if you've got other creatures that give things Riot, or if you've got an enchantment that gives all your stuff Riot, and it already has Riot, it gets 2 Riots. It gets to obviously either come in with 2 1/1 counters, or haste and a 1/1 counter. So that's pretty cool. I like the way they can stack. Most of the keyword abilities... let's see. No, that's not true. I was going to say most of those keyword type abilities don't stack, but when you think about it, like scrying, if something's got scry 1 and another card gives something the ability to scry 1, or explore, if something already has explore and you've got an enchantment that gives all your creatures explore, they get an extra instant of that. Same thing. And then whenever it attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Very typical red ability here. Probably not standard worthy. Maybe okay in limited, if there's no better options. Cavalcade of Calamity is a 2-drop enchantment. Whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. This one I could see possibly going into that mono red burn aggro type deck, just because it's going to allow that much extra damage to go through, and it only costs 2 to get out. So maybe you skip a turn where you would normally play your Viashino Pyromancer and drop this and then do the Pyromancer the next turn. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I think it would require some testing, but I could see that card doing pretty well in that deck. Next, we've got Clamor Shaman. Looks like a clown. That's definitely a clown. Clamor Shaman. Looks like a clown. Some of the Rakdos creatures look like juggalos. This one just looks like a circus clown. 3-drop, 1/1 with Riot. Whenever it attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. So this is another one that could find its way into that red aggro deck. It just makes it so that even if your opponents have gotten a creature out there and it hasn't been burnt to death, it can get damage through. So I don't know. We'll have to see how the deck evolves and what the pros end up doing with it. But that seems like a good option. It's similar to the what was the Minotaur from Amonkhet that essentially did the same thing if you exerted it. It made it so a creature couldn't block. And it was a 3-drop as well. But I think it may have been a 3/2 was the difference there. So probably a card to keep an eye on just to see what happens. It's not going to end up being a $30 card or anything. It's just an uncommon, but it could possibly make it into a deck like that. Next, we've got Daggercaster. 4-drop, 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, it does 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature that your opponents control. So it costs 1 more and doesn't have first strike, but it's very similar to your Goblin Chain Whirler. Similar effect. So I think that the fact that there is Goblin Chain Whirler is going to prevent this card from going very far. That's my opinion. Deface is a 1-drop sorcery, and you can choose one. You either destroy an artifact or destroy a creature with Defender. Very specific card, probably not going to see much play. At best, it's a sideboard card, and I don't even think it's worth doing there. Next, we've got Electrodominance. This is a card that has had some buzz about it. 2 reds and X, and it deals X damage to any target, and you can cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So you can... It's very... I don't know, without looking at specific cards, but essentially what you could do is play your Electro Dominance here for 6, 2 reds and 4 others, and then you do 4 damage to any target, and you get to cast a Dagger Caster for free, and it does 1 more. So there's a lot of that was just an example, obviously not the best one, and it's not going to be the best combo for this card. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this card to stack up and increase the amount of damage you're doing to your opponent. So I think that this will find a home. It's just probably going to be in like that Rakdos Burn, Rakdos aggro, or mono red aggro type build. So pretty neat card. Feral Maka is a 2-drop 2/2 vanilla cat creature. Meow. Next, Flames of the Raised Boar is a 6-drop instant. Flames of the Raised Boar deals 4 damage to target creature an opponent controls. Then it deals 2 damage to each other creature that player controls if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. So that goes back to that ability I was talking about before. It doesn't really have a keyword name, but if you have a 4 power creature or greater, then you get an extra benefit. This one, it obviously requires you to have the right cards around it. It requires you to have those 4 power creatures. And then, is it even worth 6 mana? I think that the mana cost is going to be what keeps this from being playable. Next, you've got Gates Ablaze. This is a 3-drop. It deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of gates you control. So, the Gates deck needed some kind of removal. It needed some kind of something. But the problem is, this is going to kill all your creatures too. The ones that are benefiting from your having gates. So I think they missed the mark on the Gates Ablaze. My personal opinion, that should have been a 3-drop. Does X damage to each creature your opponents control, where X is the number of gates you control. Yes, I mean you could get a lot of damage out of that, but it's so specific. You have to have gates. You've got to have the right amount of gates for it to do anything. That card just kind of missed the spot for me. I've seen it before, and I said the same thing then, and I don't feel any differently now. Gore Clan Wrecker is a 4-drop 2/2 with Riot and Menace. So pretty basic card. It's a common. It's supposed to be pretty basic, right? So that's okay. Whatever. Goblin Gathering is a 3-drop. Create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. This sounds like it's a reprint, but I don't know if it is, and I'm not going to look it up. So you cast a Goblin Gathering. Your first one creates 2. Your second one creates 3. Your next one creates 4. So if you're really needing to create goblins for something, like a sacrifice ability, this one can stack up and get better and better and better and better. So not terrible, but it requires a very specific deck. Or if you're just running heavy goblins, that's an option too. But if that's the case, I think there's better 3-drop goblins than this. So this probably won't see play. Next we've got Gravelhide Goblin. This is a 2-drop 2/1 Goblin Shaman. You pay 4, 3 and a green, and it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. We've seen this card in different colors up there. I'm going to skip it. Next, we've got Immolation Shaman. 2-drop 1/3. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, Immolation Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. And then you can pay 5, 2 reds and 3, and it gets +3/+3 and Menace until end of turn. So, the damage ability is so specific. You've got to have this card against the right deck for it to do that damage. Otherwise, it might just end up being a dead card. I think that's going to be what keeps this card from being good. Next, we've got Light Up the Stage. This is one that might have been the first promo they put out, or preview card, or sneak peek, or whatever the heck you want to call it. And it was in Spanish, maybe? Anyway, 3-drop, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So you can also do this for 1 if you've dealt damage to an opponent this turn. So the spectacle cost of 1 is how you always want to be able to cast this, and it's going to let you. This is very specific to a certain type of aggro or burn deck as well. But it's going to let you get deeper into your deck without having to sacrifice, discarding or not being able to cast spells from your hand or things like that. So it'll work well, I think, in replacement to or alongside Experimental Frenzy to kind of help you get more cards without having to cut yourself off. I don't know. It's okay. Mirror March. This one I like. I've heard a lot of people saying bad things about it, but I like it a lot. Even though there are times when this does nothing for you at all. So for 6, you get an enchantment that says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you flip a coin until you lose a flip, and for each flip you won, you create a token that's a copy of that creature, and they have haste, and you exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So yes, sometimes this is not going to be in a super competitive deck or something like that, but in like a casual deck or something that you're just playing with friends, want to have fun and enjoy the game instead of trying to, win the world championship. I don't know. If you're just playing for fun and you just want to enjoy the game, play a card like this. Don't be afraid, you chicken craps. And then every time a creature enters the battlefield, like I'm picturing 6 Italis. I win 6 coin flips in a row, and I get to swing with 6 Italis, and everybody's exiling stuff, and I'm getting to cast everything. That's what I'm picturing. So, but that's me. You guys know, based on the decks that I've put out, I'm not going to build mono red aggro and give that to you as a deck tech. If you want to get a super competitive Pro Tour deck, you can definitely go to any website in the world and find those. You can find them on Walmart. That's how generic they are. My decks are probably not going to win Pro Tour games. They're not going to win the Pro Tour. They're not going to get you a trophy. They may not even win Friday Night Magic. Sometimes they will, though. I've won. I'm not a complete loser. Anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there. My apologies. But playing fun cards like this, that's why I play Magic. I just want to enjoy the game. So, if you're not a chicken crap, play something like Mirror March and see what kind of fun you can have with it. Alright, next we've got Rixmati Reveler. 2-drop 2-2. Rixmati? Did I say that right? 2-drop 2-2 has a spectacle of 4. Well, that doesn't make sense. Isn't spectacle supposed to give you some kind of benefit? Well, hold on a second. When it enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. If you paid the spectacle cost, instead you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So you get to the point, this is another one that's going to be probably a staple card in the Rakdos aggro burn type deck. You've emptied your hand, you've played all your 1, 2, 3 drops, and you need some more cards. So you can pay this spectacle cost, even though it's a little more expensive. You discard nothing because you've already played it, and then you draw 3 cards and you're ready to go again. So pretty good card. I think it'll probably be in that particular deck. Outside of that, it still could be a good card in other decks just because it lets you draw. Next, we've got Rubble Reading. This reminds me of, what was the movie Disney did with the little robot that was always scanning crap? That's what this is. Pay 4, destroy target land, scry 2. I don't need to explain that, right? Alright, next we've got Rubble Belt Recluse. It's a 5-drop 6/5. It attacks each combat if able. This is one of those cards that in limited, you're gonna pick it up if you're in the right colors, and you're gonna put it in your deck just because it's huge. In like standard or any other format, there's better 5-drops available, so it'll get overlooked. Next, we've got Rumbling Ruin. That is a 6-drop 6/6 When it enters the battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. Creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to that number can't block this turn. So there's a lot of words to say that, but I guess that's how you have to word it. It's got to be in a deck where you've been able to distribute +1/+1 counters, which is nice because the new Riot ability lets you put those counters on creatures. So it may be able to work that in as a finishing touch on a Riot deck, where you play that and make it so that none of your opponent's creatures can block, and you swing through with all your creatures that you've put 1/1 counters on instead of giving haste. So you're buying your time, rumbling ruin, swing through, kaboom! That's how I see it working. Next, we've got Scorch Mark. 2-drop instant. Deals 2 damage to target creature. If it would die this turn, exile it instead. Very, very basic card. Skargan Hellkite is a 5-drop 4/4 flyer with Riot. You can pay 4, and it deals 2 damage, divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. And it can only activate that ability if it has a +1/+1 counter on it. So sometimes you do want to give this haste if it's at the end of the game and you've burnt your opponent down to the point where this last 4 damage is going to be what kills them. Typically, though, just so that you have that ability available, I think you're going to do the counter when you get your Riot ability. So, I don't know. I think this card can be fine. I don't know if it's a mythic. I mean, obviously it's a mythic. I don't know if it's worth being a mythic. So, we'll just have to see how it plays. This is another one that the art kind of confuses me. I think it's just a regular dragon with like a mastodon skull strapped to its head. Is that what you guys see? I see a regular dragon here, and then a mastodon skull strapped to its head. Anyway, moving right along. Skewer the Critics is a 3-drop, deals 2 damage to any target. 90% of the time, this is going to be cast for its spectacle cost. This is almost an instant include in your mono red and your Rakdos burn, just because you're going to do damage to your opponent, so having another lightning bolt is fantastic. It's not a lightning bolt because it's not an instant, but you know what I mean. One cost, 3 damage spells are fantastic. This one is no different. Smeltward Angus is a 2-drop 2/1. You can pay 3 and sack it to gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this is kind of maybe a cheaper way to start out with, like that sack and steal combo. You get this out there, and then it's essentially a body with a act of treason attached to it. Act of treason on a stick? Is that what people say? That's what this is. Spear Spewer is a 1-drop 0/2 defender. You can tap it, and it does 1 damage to each player. So you can tap it to activate Spectacle, is the way that should read. If you're building a Spectacle deck, this is probably a good include. One drop 0/2 is not fantastic, but being able to activate that Spectacle ability that you've got on all the other cards in your deck is definitely worth putting it in. Next, we've got Spike Wheel Acrobat. This is a 4-drop 5/2. It has Spectacle of 3. Other than that, it's a vanilla creature. But a 5/2 for 3, it's not bad. The defense is terrible. You know, it dies to everything. Next, we've got Storm Strike. 1-drop, instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. You get to scry 1. So, that's not bad for 1. Yeah, I don't know. This is a limited type card, I think. It'll probably never see play in Standard. 10 Street Dodger. I read this 10 Street Hooligan. I don't know why. Where have I heard that? Yeah, we'll see if anybody caught that. 1-drop 1/1 with haste. You pay 1, and it can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with Defender. Creatures with Defender are so few and far between that this is, you may as well just write the ability as pay 1, activate Spectacle. That's what this is meant to do, I think. So that'll be a good Spectacle activation as well. Alright, final color. We're moving on to green. We got a 4-drop, 3/4 in Axebane Beast. Vanilla creature. Nothing to talk about. Nothing to see here. Biogenic Ooze is a 5-drop 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green ooze creature token. And I guess the fact that this is an ooze is going to be important in just a second here. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control. Pay 4, create an ooze. So if you're going all in on ooze, obviously the biogenic ooze is going to help you out. I'm sure someone will find a way to break this card. And this is another one that's pretty cool, and I may try to build around just to see if I can build an ooze deck. Sounds fun. Alright, biogenic upgrade. 6 cost, distribute 3 1/1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, then double the number of 1/1 counters on each of those creatures. This feels very Simic, feels very Merfolk. It's a good flavor card, and I think that the reason this one's going to miss being played in Standard is because it costs 6 for 1, and by that time, I think that like the Merfolk deck that is going to try and become a thing, will want to be they'll want to be done by then. So it's a cool card. It's definitely flavorful. I don't think it's going to make it into Standard. I'm so sorry. What do we got next? End Raise Forerunners is an 8-drop, 7/7, Vigilance, Trample, Haste. When it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. This one's awfully expensive, but it does an awful lot as well. There was another boar when I first started playing. It was back in Kaladesh. I think it came out of one of the Eldrazi that did essentially the same thing, only I think it was a permanent effect and not just a when it enters the battlefield. The cost is so prohibitive on this. So seeing it in Standard is probably not going to happen. If you're in this color in Limited, you're going to play that. If that's your bomb you're looking for. So I like it, but I don't know if it'll see play in Standard. Enraged Ceratok is a 4-drop 4/4. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That's another one that in Limited is going to be fantastic. There's better 4-drops around and out there in the green colors that are going to be better than this in Standard. When I say something's not going to see Standard play, I don't mean no one will ever play this in a Standard deck. I mean in the competitive sense of the word. It won't make it to a competitive level, but I mean obviously the cards can be played in Standard, but I just wanted to clear that up. It's not that you're never going to see it. It's just that in the competitive sense, I think there's either better cards, different cards, or the decks that it would be in are trying to do other things. So, but I may be wrong on a lot of these too. Like End-Race Forerunners, I'm kind of stuck on this boar. Can be a way for like the green Stompy deck to just finish everything up. I mean that'll wrap up the game pretty quick. So to say that you'll never see it, I don't know. It's got a lot of abilities. It's just so expensive is I think the biggest problem. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Enraged Ceratok we went over. There's better 4-drops out there, but in Limited it's not bad. Gatebreaker Ram. I love this picture, this artwork. The 4-horned ram coming through the gate. It's a 3-drop 2/2. It gets +1/+1 for each gate you control, and as long as you control 2 or more, it has Vigilance and Trample. So again, that's very specific. It's got to go in a very specific deck and have a very specific set of cards around it. So that obviously, I think that keeps it from being competitive standard, but kind of a casual standard deck that's trying to become a thing is that gate deck. So it's a good creature for that particular deck, and I think they got the cost right here. 3-drop 2/2 that gets bigger and has vigilance and trample. I think that's more in line than the red one that I said I didn't really like. So anyway, Gift of Strength, another awesome art here. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn. This card's already in standard, so no big deal. Is it still in standard? I think it's still in standard, or it just rotated out, one or the other. Growth Chamber Guardian is a 2-drop 2/2. Again, very simic. Elf Crab Warrior. It's got a 3-cost adapt 2. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on it, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Garden, reveal it, and put it in your hand. So, like in the Elf Ball deck, is this a better card in that Elf Ball deck than some other elf? I'm not sure. The nice thing is it lets you search up more, and it only costs 1 more. So you could play this, then the next turn adapt it. It becomes a 4/4, and you get to go search for another one. So, man, without sitting down and looking at how the deck would play out, I don't know if this is going to be better than X other elf, but I feel like it could find a place in that elf deck. In the crab deck, though, I feel like it's too slow. That's a joke. I don't think there's a crab deck. If there is, leave me a link in the comments. So, Growth Chamber Guardian seems like it's pretty good. I like it. Gruul Beastmaster is a 4-drop 2/2 with Riot. Whenever it attacks, another target creature you control gets +X/+0 till end of turn, where X is its power. So, if you've got the +1/+1 counter from your Riot ability, then you're going to be able to give another creature +3. If you've given it haste, then you're going to get to give something +2. You could also pump this up to give something more. So, pretty cool card. I don't know. I think that having an ability like this on a creature makes it more enticing, because the Gruul kind of Riot deck, or it's very creature focused. You need to have a ton of creatures in that deck to make it worthwhile. So putting an ability like this when it attacks instead of an enter the battlefield or something like that, I think that ability makes this more playable, because you don't have to have that ability on an instant or sorcery, and it lasts forever. As long as this creature survives, you'll have that ability going forward. So that's pretty cool. That's another deck that, as I've read the Gruul cards, I want to put together a really heavy creature heavy deck and see how it plays out, because there's a lot of cool abilities like that. I'm sure we'll see more as we go here. The Guardian Project is a 4-drop enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. This feels very EDH, right? Very commander-centric. If you got a heavy creature deck, a creature-heavy EDH deck, this is probably a good card for it. Gonna let you draw a lot of cards. Standard, probably less. Okay, bye. Incubation Druid is a 2-drop 0/2. It can tap for 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If it has a +1/+1 counter on it, you can add 3 mana of that type, and you can also adapt this for 5. So this has potential to be a very good card. It's got good potential to be able to pump out a lot of mana too. The downside is it's on an 0/2 body, which is easily removed. So that's one that we're going to have to think about, look into, see how we could abuse it and make it work. I think that is one of the cards that I was looking at and thinking to myself, man, we could really, really, really abuse that card. We just gotta look into it a little bit more and see how. All right, moving right along. Mammoth Spider is a 5-drop 3/5 with reach. It's been reprinted a billion times, so we're gonna skip it. Open the gates. Pay 1 green, search your library for a basic land or gate card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your library. So there's a lot of these already in standard where you pay 1, search for a land, and put it in your hand. So this one's not necessarily special. It will let you search up gates. So in that gate deck, this may be a thing. I would guess probably not, because there's so many cards that make it so that you can draw in that deck, which would be better, and it'll still get you to your lands, so that kind of puts this one on a back burner somewhere. Rampage of the Clans is a 4-drop instant. Destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. So this is, at best, sideboard in any format, because you don't want to take up space in your library with cards like this and then not need it. So at the very best, it's a sideboard card. I think that there's situations where you'd rather have your opponent with a bunch of 3/3s than have them with a lot of those enchantments and artifacts that are making your day terrible. So that might see some play. 100% of the time out of the sideboard, though. So Rampaging Rintorn is a 5-drop 4/4 with Riot. Other than that, vanilla creature. Good fun, good fun. Regenesis is a 5-drop instant. You can return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. The key word on this is permanent cards. Return up to 2 target permanents. So otherwise, if it was creatures, there's other cards that do this better. And there may still be other cards that do this better. Like the Golgari Finebroker costs 1 less. It does require 2 black, 2 green, so it's maybe a little bit harder to cast sometimes. And it only does 1. So, I don't know. You just got to look at the cards and compare them. And this is nice, because it'll let you get back 2 of any permanent. Lands, enchantments, something that you've had to sacrifice, like your sagas. So, it's a pretty decent card. I like it. Root Snare's back. Meh. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn for 2. Is Fog still a thing? Are they still doing that? I hope not. I haven't seen it in a while, so. But I think Root Snare was already in standard anyway, so it's not adding to the turbo fogness. Next, we've got Sagittar's Volley. It's a 3-drop instant. Destroy target creature with flying, and it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. So this is a good counter to your Afterlife mechanic type decks, where every time one of your opponent's creatures die, they create a 1/1. Well, this is going to handle a lot of that for you. So, but if the Afterlife deck becomes a thing, if it becomes a competitive deck, then Sagittar's Volley is going to become a sideboard staple for anything running green, because it's going to handle that deck. If Afterlife doesn't really become a thing, then I don't think Sagittar's Volley ever becomes a card that anybody would play regularly. And that's best case scenario for that card. There's probably still other ways that are better than Sagittar's Volley. So it's very specific in its usefulness. I like the art, though. All these dragons getting shot at. Oh, poor dragons. Saruli Caretaker is a 1-drop 0/3 with Defender. Tap an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. Tap her and an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. So there's certain situations where this is not too bad. Probably in more of a limited format than any other, just kind of helping you ramp up. But, yeah, it's okay. Sorrowform Hybrid is a 2-drop 2/2 with Adapt 4 that you have to pay 6. So, 6 7, 8. 8 cost for a 6/6 vanilla creature is probably not what you're looking for. Moving right along. Silhana Wayfinder is a 2-drop 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal a creature or land, put it on top of your library, and the rest go on the bottom of your library in a random order. So again, this is maybe something. No, I don't even think that this would go in the elf deck. I don't think that there's a place for this that there's not already something else that's better. I just don't think this will find a real home. It may replace. Oh, what's the elf? It costs 3. It's a 1/1. When it enters, you search for a land and it goes into play. But I think that's, if that's what you want, if you want to find a land, you want it to come into play instead of going to your hand or on top of your library, which is where this one puts it. I just feel like there's other cards that do that ability better. So, skip it. Steeple Creeper is a 3-drop 4/2. You can pay 3 and a blue to give it flying until end of turn. So that's not a bad card. I think you make it uncommon and give it a adapt 1 or something like that. Then you really make it Simicky. It's a frog snake, so I love it. This one's probably really good in limited, but you'll never see it in standard, I don't think. Stony Strength is 1 green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and untap it. So good defensive spell. Also, if you're working with the counters and doing things with +1/+1 counters, this is a good one. Next, we've got Sylvan Brush Strider. Looks like a 3-drop 3/2. When it enters, you gain 2 life. Very basic. Don't need to spend any time on it. Look at the art on this. Nothing against Dan Scott. The dude's a great artist, but this just looks so basic. Doesn't it? Am I crazy? Like, look at this. 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 See how these are all very intricate. This one and this one, they're just so basic. Dan, you're a great artist. What is this? Anyway, Territorial Boar. 2-drop, 2/2. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 and Vigilance until end of turn. It's another one of those cards that's fine. It's just kind of okay, and it'll probably never see play. In standard. In limited, 2 for 2. A 2/2 for 2 is fine, and it gives you that option of when you play bigger stuff, it gets bigger, so it may be okay. Titanic Brawl is a 2-drop instant. It costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. A target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So Titanic Brawl is just kind of like a prey upon, but it can be a prey upon for 1 if you've got some counters going on. So you get a benefit from that. Not bad. Tower Defense is a reprint, right? 2-drop. Gain creatures you control get +0, +5, and gain reach until end of turn. Maybe that's different. Maybe that's not a reprint. I don't know. Anyway, another card that's pretty specific. It may be decent to at least have on the top of your sideboard in limited, just because you're trying to in limited. You're looking for that evasion, and you know that your opponent is as well. So being able to do something like that, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I think you'd prefer to just find some removal and go that route instead. What do we got here? Trollbred Guardian is another very simic creature. 5-drop, 5/5 Troll Frog Warrior with Adapt 2 for 3, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. So, as you can see, with Simic, you're getting a lot of benefits from the +1/+1 counters, and I think that's the reason that people are thinking the Merfolk deck may finally have some legs, is because you're starting to get a lot of cards that benefit those +1/+1 counters. And we're going to see more as we jump into these cards here with the gold cards, the multicolor cards. So we'll see. As far as this particular one's concerned, if you can get this in your pre-release pack and you can build around that +1/+1 counter strategy, get cat, come on. Then that's a good card. You definitely want to include it. Next, we've got Wilderness Reclamation. This one I think is also a reprint. Or maybe I read it the other day. Maybe that's it. It's a 4-drop enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. It's fantastic. I think that this will find a home in a standard deck somewhere. Which one? I don't know. But it's going to have to be... yeah. I don't know. Blue, white, and green control? Maybe? I mean, just splashing green so that you can play this card and untap all your lands at the end of every turn, or at the beginning of, or the end of all your turns, and having something like that, as we talked about with the Azorius ability, that gives you a benefit for playing spells on your turn, being able to cast Wilderness Reclamation, and then you can cast your instance on your turn and have an instance on their turn because you've got those lands available again. I think, man, I don't know. I don't do this professionally. No. I do think that will... Just keep your eyes peeled for Wilderness Reclamation, okay? Next, we got Wrecking Beast. 7-drop, 6/6 with Riot and Trample. Pretty basic spell here, but it's a common. So if you're in these colors, it's probably going to benefit you to pick that up in as one of your more bomb-like creatures. If you can find, rares and mythics that are more bombastic than this, then that's fine. But it's a common, so you're going to run into it more than likely, especially if you're picking up the packs that are in these colors. So limited format, good to go. Standard, it's just not... It's not going to cut it. There's other spells there's other creatures that are better. So, yeah, there you go. Next, we've got Absorb. We're getting into the multicolor spells now, so that's fun. How much do we got? We got about 100 cards to go. We're more than halfway done. Absorb is a white and 2 blue to counter target spell and gain 3 life. There's other spells, I think, that are more likely to be used because they don't have that white color requirement. But if you're already in blue and white, it might be okay. I don't know. I don't play a lot of counter spells typically, so I don't know. You tell me how they work. Yeah, I don't think so. Aeromunculus is a 3-drop 2/3 flyer with Adapt 1. Pretty basic. Applied Biomancy is a green and a blue, and you get to choose one or both. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, or return target creature to its owner's hand. So I don't know why you wouldn't choose both. Again, just like the one we saw earlier, unless there's not an available target. Mouth's getting dry with all this talking. Alright, next we've got Azorius Night Arbiter. 3, a white and a blue, for a 2/5 Vigilant that can't be blocked. So not a lot of damage on that one, but it can't be blocked. It does cost 5 though, so Azorius Skyguard is 4, a white and a blue, for an uncommon 3/3 flying first strike. Creatures your opponents control get -1, -0. So this is going to really hurt things like tokens, but outside of that, it might not be that fantastic, so it's rather expensive for what you get, I think. Next, we've got Basilica Bellhaunt. Basilica? That's what we're going with. Basilica Bellhaunt. 2 whites, 2 blacks for a 3/4 spirit. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and you gain 3 life. So the flavor's perfect. The card's fine. It's continuing the tradition that was started in Guilds of Ravnica of having the 4 cost, 2 of each, uncommon creature. Perfect. Bedevil is 2 blacks and a red to destroy an artifact, creature, or planeswalker. So that's a spell. I don't know if it's rare worthy, but it's a thing. Maybe it's rare worthy because it gives you the artifact and planeswalker option, whereas something like murder just hits a creature. So that's fine. I'll allow it. Next, we've got Biomancer's Familiar, green and a blue for a 2/2 mutant. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to activate to less than 1. So it can make your activate abilities 1, but not 0. Tap, and the next time a target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. So what that's going to allow you to do is, let's go up one here. Your Aeromunculus adapts for a blue, a green, and 2. Adapt 1. Adapt 1 says, if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So Biomancer's Familiar is going to make it so that this only costs a blue and a green, and you can do it over and over and over and over and over. Well, once per turn because of the ability. The next time target creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. So every turn you can adapt. And if you've got something where it was costing, 5 or 6 to adapt 3 or 4, then that can really stack up and become a huge problem for your opponent, because you're going to be able to do it for a cost of 3 or 4 or 2 instead of the higher cost, and you're going to be able to do it consistently, repetitively. So Biomancer's Familiar, definitely a rare, and as long as you can keep it protected, can really help change your board state pretty quickly. Alright, next we've got Bolrac Clan Crusher. 3, a red and a green for a 4/4 tap to remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control, and it deals 2 damage to any target. So you remove a +1/+1 counter from something and shock something else. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on a lot of these cards. I'm going to try and pick up the pace here so we can get this thing finished up, okay? Okay, stick with me. Captive Audience is a 7-drop, 5, a black, and a red. It enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, which it would be their upkeep, not yours, because they control it, right? Choose one that hasn't been chosen. So this will only work 3 times. After the 3rd time, they don't just keep going. So they can lose. Their life total becomes 4. They discard their hand, or each opponent creates 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So you're going to get, unless they remove this enchantment, you're going to get all 3 of those to happen. So your opponent's going to have to look at their situation and figure out what's going to be the best for them, because at some point they're going to have to discard all their cards. At another one, they're going to have 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens staring at them, and at some point their life total is going to become 4. I feel like the 7 cost makes this kind of hard to play, but at the same time, and after you cast this, then you've still got 3 more turns that all this stuff's going to happen over. So it's very slow, but it's also a pretty cool card, and the flavor's perfect. So it's a good card. I like it. Cinder Vines is a 2-drop, rare, Gruel enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to them, and you can pay 1 to destroy target artifact. Pay 1 and sacrifice Cinder Vines to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. Not a lot to talk about. Sideboard card. Next we've got Clan Guildmage. This is the first of the Guild Mages that we've dealt with in this set. Red and a green for a 2/2. Its abilities, you can pay 1 and a red and tap it to make a creature not be able to block. And you can pay 2 and a green and tap it, and one of your lands becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn that's still a land. So this is, the flavor's perfect on it. Is it going to see competitive play? Probably not, but they got the flavor just right. Next, for the Simic Combine, we've got the Combine Guildmage, a green and a blue for another 2/2. And its abilities are also, I mean, they're perfect. It's a Merfolk Wizard, and you can pay 1 and a green, tap it. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. That's a very strong ability. Yeah, that's a good ability. And then 1 and a blue, tap it to move a +1/+1 counter from a target creature you control onto another target creature you control. I think this is probably one of the strongest guild mages out there, because there's so much in Simic that is dealing with those +1/+1 counters that having all of your creatures each turn. Let me reread this, make sure I've got it right. 2 tap, this turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So all of your creatures, if you pay the 2 and tap this, all of your creatures are going to enter with at least 1 +1/+1 counter on them. And that's in addition to all the other Merfolk abilities out there that are going to add more and more and more. That's a really strong ability, and I think it's really going to help the Merfolk deck. Yeah, that's a good one. The Cult Guildmage is a black and a red for a 2/2. Pay 4, target player discards a card, only when you could do a sorcery. And then pay a red and tap, deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. In comparison, the Combine Guildmage is just crushing my soul. This just seems so weak in comparison. 1 for 1 is, I mean, it's whatever. And this is just too expensive. So, Deputy of Detention. Moving on to another rare here. 1, a white and a blue for a 1/3. When it enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls and all other non-land permanents that player controls with the same name as that permanent until the Deputy of Detention leaves the battlefield. So this is going to kind of help with that prison deck, but it can also save you from those prison decks. You know, if somebody's used Conclave Tribunal on 3 of your things and you play the Deputy of Detention, it'll wipe them all out. Now, they'll get them back if Deputy of Detention leaves the battlefield, but it can also, you know, there's different ways to make this work. Or if somebody's pummeling you with a bunch of tokens, Deputy of Detention will get rid of all of them. So there's good places for this card, and I think it'll probably be more sideboardish, just, you know, so that if whatever deck ends up against this matchup, they can sideboard this in to help save them from that. Domri, Chaos Bringer. Got our first, this is the Planeswalker. This is the one from the Planeswalker deck, I believe. No, it's not. No, it isn't. I'm a liar. Domri, Chaos Bringer. 4 cost, 5 loyalty Planeswalker. +1. Add a red or a green, and if that mana is spent on a creature spell, it gains Riot. If it already has Riot, remember I said before, it gains an additional activation of the Riot ability. -3. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Reveal up to 2 creatures from among them. Put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. That's a good ability. You know, being able to put 2 creatures into your hand extra, and you just kind of alternate back and forth between making mana to cast those creature spells and looking for more creature spells in your deck. It's a good addition to that Gruul Riot / creature heavy deck. So, not bad. And then the ultimate, you get an emblem with. At the beginning of each end step, not just yours, you create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample. So the ultimate isn't all that ultimate, I don't think. But being able to use those plus and minus abilities to, you know, dig through and find and then cast your creature spells, I think is pretty decent. Dovin Grand Arbiter is a 3-drop, 3 loyalty planeswalker, and it's kind of complicated. So I said I was going to speed this up, but I have to do some explaining on these cards like this. So you can +1, and until end of turn, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you put a loyalty counter on Dovin Grand Arbiter. So if you activate that, then this goes to 4. And then you swing with 3 creatures and they all connect. Then the loyalty goes to 7. So you could potentially, depending on what you've played on your previous turns, you could potentially get this up to 7 loyalty on its first activation. If you've played 3 1-drops on turns 1 and 2, I'm thinking Mist Cloak Herald and Healer's Hawk. So you got 3 1/1s out there. You play this on turn 3, then you +1 to get it to 4. Swing with those 3 creatures. They can't be blocked or they've got the evasion, so there's a good chance you'll be able to get them through. They all connect. You add 3 more. You're at 7. Next turn, you can ultimate. Anyway, the -1 ability is to create a Thopter and gain a life. And then the -7 that I was just talking about, you look at the top 10 cards of your library and put 3 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So obviously, you want to try and get Dovin up above that 7 threshold before you do the ultimate ability, because this isn't an emblem that you get. It's just a one-time ability. So you've got to constantly be going up and down to get the true did I just die? To get the true benefit of those abilities. So that's fun. Next we got Dovin's Acuity. It's a 3 cost, 1 a white and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw a card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell during your main phase, you can return it to your hand. So this is kind of like the counterpart that goes with the Dimir version, where if you surveil, it goes back in your hand, and when you play it, your opponent discards a card, you draw a card. So this is the Azorius version of that. Next we've got Emergency Powers. This is 7 cost, 5 a white and a blue. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards, and you exile Emergency Powers. And if you do the addendum, if you cast it during your main phase, you can put a permanent with a cost of 7 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. It costs 7 to play. I don't know. I think this is one that is going to kind of, it's going to need some testing and some finagling to figure out where it would fit into what deck, but it's a card. It's a mythic. This is my favorite card in the whole set. Ethereal Absolution. 4 a white and a black. For an enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. And then you can pay for 2 a white and a black to exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. And if it was a creature card, you create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. This is one that I've used on Arena yesterday in multiple games. I had this card win me a few games on its own, just by itself. If you get to the 6 mana and you can start pumping out creatures, I mean, I had it absolutely wipe 2 different decks. The Saprolings deck, it just absolutely destroys it. And the Afterlife deck, this wrecks it too. So there's a few decks where this card is fantastic. And if you've got... the deck that I play doesn't run any creature spells at all. There's no creature spells in the deck. But being able to exile my opponent's creature spells from their graveyards to create 2/2 flyers, it works out fantastic. I can talk a little bit more about this card because I've physically used it on Arena. Physically and on Arena won't go well together, do they? I have used this card on Arena and seen it in action, seen it work. Does that mean that the card's going to be the best card in the set and blow up to be $75 a copy? No, it doesn't. It means that I like this card and it fits my playstyle. So that's my personal favorite card, and I hadn't seen it until I got on Arena. So I don't know if somebody spoiled this card or not, but if you did, fantastic. You got a great card. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to be that great of a card. In the competitive sense, it's just right up my alley, and I had a great time with it. So we'll see what else we can do to abuse that thing. Final Payment is another one that I was using on Arena a little bit. It's a white and a black, and you have to either pay 5 life or sack a creature or enchantment to destroy a creature at instant speed. This is good removal. If you've got some kind of life gain, some way to recoup that 5 life, then that's an easy decision. Or if you're pumping out some kind of tokens, or you've got afterlife creatures, that's another benefit that you could get from that. So, is it the best removal in the set? No. Is it okay? Yes. If you run into it in your pre-release pack, do you play it? Depends on what other cards you've got to put around it. It's got to be built right, otherwise you could really hurt yourself with that. So, if you're just getting into playing Magic, you might want to be careful because you might hurt yourself. Next, we've got Fireblade Artist. Black and a red for a 2/2 with haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can sacrifice a creature, and when you do, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to an opponent or planeswalker. Pretty decent if you've got that sacrifice, some kind of steal and sack, but even that wouldn't work really because you do this at the beginning of your upkeep, and I think that's what hurts this. Maybe it should have been like at the beginning of combat or at the end of combat. Would have made that steal and sack ability a little bit better. As it sets now, you definitely have to sacrifice one of your own creatures, and I don't know if that's what Rakdos, is that what they want to be doing? I don't know. It feels a little off to me. Next, we've got Frenzied Aronix, a 4-drop 3/3 with Riot and Trample. You pay 6, it gets +3/+0 until end of turn. We've got Frilled Mystic. This is the uncommon 4-cost Simic creature, 2 green, 2 blue for a 3/2 with Flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can counter target spell. So that feels, again, like Simic has gotten all the love. This is a Elf Lizard Wizard. Elf Lizard Wizard. So it's not going to be good in necessarily the Merfolk deck, and trying to build it into the Elf deck doesn't really work because the Elves are mostly they're typically mono green or like a green red if you're trying to get that Elf Ball type deck going. But this also feels like a very good card if you can get those colors to work, because you can counter anything. And you get a 3/2 body at the same time. Feels worth it. Next, we've got the Galloping Lizrog, a freaking 5-drop 3/3 frog lizard with Trample. When it enters the battlefield, you can move counters that you have on other creatures and put twice that many onto your Galloping Lizrog. So if you're in that if you're in that type of deck, if that's what you end up with at your pre-release or whatever, then this has got big benefits possibly. And it even could in a standard deck if you've got the right build around it. So that's a pretty cool card. Get to the point. I bet this is what a lot of people are saying right now. If you're still watching, if you've stuck around this long, you're a true fan, and we really appreciate it. So, 3, a black and a red for a common instant. Destroy target creature. Scry 1. It's just really too expensive to be competitive, but maybe in limited, if that's what you run into as your removal in your packs, then it's worth picking up. Grasping Thrall is a 3, a white and a black for a common 3/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, 2 damage to each opponent, you gain 2 life. Growth Spiral is a green and a blue for an instant. Draw a card, put a land card, and you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. And this feels like it's too good to be common. So, yeah, I mean, 2 costs, draw a card, and play an extra land. So it's good ramp, good card draw. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this card. It's fantastic. Gruul Spellbreaker. Again, Simic. All the love. What the freaking crap is going on here? Gruul Spellbreaker is a 1, a red, and a green for a 3/3 Riot and Trample. And as long as it's your turn, you and Gruul Spellbreaker have hexproof. This guy looks just like Hulk. Did they do that on purpose? I mean, he looks just like him. Maybe with some tusks or something. I can't really tell what's going on there. I don't know. This card's fine. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't protect you from control. It doesn't really protect you from burn. I don't know. I don't think it's as good as I thought it was the first time I read it. So, there it is. Gyre Engineer is 1, a green and a blue for a 1/1 that you can tap to add green and blue. So, nice mana dork. Good mana dork. Aww. Hackrobat is a 1, a black, and a red for a 2/3 human rogue with a spectacle cost of black and a red. And then you can pay a black to give it death touch and a red to give it +2/-2. So that I like that one. I feel like that's very Rakdos, and the ability's not bad. Yeah, it looks like it should have flying. Oh, tightrope. She's not flying. She's on a tightrope. You see it right there? Tightrope. This is the thing that she's holding to balance herself. I thought she was flying. Anyway, that's not a bad card. I like that, especially if you can cast it for the spectacle cost. Then we've got High Alert. 1, a white, and a blue for an enchantment. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power, and creatures you control with Defender can attack as though they didn't have Defender. Pay 4, untap target creature. This is fine if you're building that Defender deck that seems to be coming together. But I thought it was really coming together when we got the Elder Dragon. That's, for some reason, escaping my brain right now. So I don't know. This is nice because it's on an enchantment and gives the same ability without the card draw. So I don't know. This feels fine, but I still don't think that deck is going to be a competitive thing. That's my opinion. Hydroid Crassus is a blue, a green, and X. When you cast this spell, you gain half X life and draw half X cards, rounding down each time. It's a flying, trampling X machine, and it comes into play with X 1/1 counters on it. So if you pay X is 5, you're going to draw 2 cards, gain 2 life, and have a 5/5 flying trample jellyfish beast. So this is a card that is definitely one you could call that bomb you're looking for in limited. But it also, with all the ramp and things that are in the Simic right now, this could maybe be good in standard as a big evasive mess of a creature that lets you gain life and draw cards. If you can find a way to pump in the right amount of mana, this is really good. Imperious Oligarch is a white, a black for a 2/1 with Vigilance and Afterlife 1. Pretty basic. Judith the Scourge Diva is a 1 black and red for a 2/2 human shaman that gives all your other creatures +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So this is part of that kind of Steel and Sack deck, or there feels like there's a few places where Judith could fit in and do really good work. So I like it. Good card. Kaya Orzhov Usurper is 1, a white and a black for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. +1, you exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least one of them was a creature. And then you can -1 to exile a non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less, so tokens, that's what I heard. And then -5, she deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So I feel like they've kind of hosed that mono white deck, because there's like, this is really good for getting rid of Healer's Hawk, Fountain of Renewal, any of those 1-drops. You guys know what I'm talking about. The blue one, the Mistcloak Herald, it gets rid of all those early game threats, and this is only a 3-drop, so you can get it out there pretty quickly and start wrecking those things. But then in the long run, you get this thing built up, and I feel like it's not going to find a real home but I could be wrong because it does a lot against a lot of different decks. So it's possible. It's possible. I don't know. It just does so many things, but it doesn't do any of them like really well, is where I'm getting here. 4 mana, board wipes. 2 whites, 2 blacks, destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way. So 4 cost, board wipe. I love it. It's in that deck that I was talking about earlier. And it works fine. It's not, and that was, I think, the original, like when Niv Mizzet came around, 3 blues, 3 reds, everybody was like, oh, we're not going to be able to cast it. But you can cast it. It's not hard. The way the mana base is right now, it's pretty easy to cast anything, so not bad. Knight of the Last Breath is 5, a white, and a black for a 4/4 giant knight, and you can pay 3, sack another non-token creature, and create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying, and this has Afterlife 3. So lots of good token production. I think that the cost of it is what's going to keep it from being a standard card, but maybe something in limited that you could use because it's got the opportunity to pump out some tokens, and it's also a pretty decent body. Next we have Ravnica Allegiance Renegade, white and a blue for a 2/2. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So this hoses a few things, specifically like your ramp where you're using mana dorks and things. This hurts it a lot. Now, does that mean that this is going to be in everybody's sideboard all the time? I doubt it, but maybe. I guess it really depends on what you're typically playing against. You need to know what your meta is, what you're playing against regularly, and you know if you need to use this card or not. Law Mage's Binding is 1, a white and a blue for a flash enchantment aura. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. I like this because it has flash, and its mana cost is good. It only costs 3. I like this art too. Macabre Mockery is 2, a black and a red for an instant. Put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So this is not too bad. I think that you could even use this on things that have hexproof, because the card itself does not have the abilities of the creature, I think. So if somebody's got a Carnage Tyrant sitting there in a graveyard, you could cast this and get it for 4, swing for 9 with trample, and then you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next turn, or at the beginning of the next end step, or maybe you've got some other ability that you get a benefit from sacrificing a creature you control. So that's a thing too. Mortify's back. This is a reprint, right? 1, a white and a black to destroy a creature or enchantment. It's not bad. Nikaya of the Old Ways. I love this card. It's 3, a red and a green for a 5/5. You can't cast non-creature spells, and whenever you tap lands for mana, you add twice that much. So you add 1 mana of any type that land produced. That's in addition to what it produced. So this is one that I want to put in that Gruul creature deck. And this is one of the reasons that I said that deck needs to be very creature heavy, is because there's things like this where you can't cast non-creature spells. What's the Nullhide Ferox is the same way, but that's a good creature to put in that deck. It's a big creature for not a lot of mana, and so I could get a 6/6 out there, and then next turn play this, and then start really pumping out creatures because I'd have double the mana. Yeah, I like it. Pitiless Pontiff is a white and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Cleric. Pay 1, sack another creature, and it gains Death Touch and Indestructible, until end of turn. So this works well with the Afterlife mechanic. Prime Speaker Vanifair is a legendary here, 2, a green and a blue for a 2/4, and you tap it, sack another creature you control to search your library for a card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate it anytime you could cast a sorcery. So this card has lots of potential. It's just gotta figure out how to do it right. One thing I do like is that this is an ooze. It's an ooze. It's an elf ooze wizard. So I was talking earlier about maybe trying to use that ooze card and see if I can find a way to break it. But this may be a way. I'll have to look. It's going to take some research and some finagling, but this may be a very good card. And it's obviously a good card in some like commander situations, things like that. So I think this card will probably continue to go up in value. But this is an MTG Finance. It's not my game, bro. We got Rafter Demon. This is a common. 2, a black and a red for a 4/2. Or you can pay the spectacle cost of 5. 3, a black and a red. And if you pay the spectacle cost, then when it enters, each opponent discards a card. I just don't think this card is worth it either way. Spectacle cost or not. I just don't think it's very good. Rakdos Firewheeler is 2 black and 2 red for a 4/3. When it enters the battlefield, it does 2 damage to target opponent and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. So that's a very Rakdos. Next, we've got Rakdos Roustabout. 1, a black and a red for a 3/2. Whenever it becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. So no matter what, 1 damage is getting through from this, which is going to help you with your spectacle cost. Nice. Rakdos, the namesake for the cult. Rakdos the Showstopper. 4, a black and a red for a 6/6 demon with flying and trample. When it enters the battlefield, you flip a coin for each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp, and destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. So it's very random, and I think that's probably what keeps it out of standard. But it's still a cool card, right? And it's very on flavor. Next, we got Ravager Worm. It's a 6-drop, 3, a red, and 2 green for a 4/5 with Riot. When it enters the battlefield, you choose up to 1. It either fights target creature you don't control, or you can destroy a land. Destroy target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. I don't know. I just don't know. I love the art. I think that the cost, again, is going to be the thing that prohibits this. Prohibits? Is that the right word? Am I even using the right words in this thing? That, you know, keeps this from being a really good card. But I don't know. Doesn't seem terrible. Whatever. Moving along. Rhythm of the Wild. 1, a red and a green. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. So this would go in that Gruul creature heavy. Makes it so counters are... It hoses control, makes all your stuff come in bigger and better and faster. It's very Gruul. I think this is a really good card. Rubble Belt Runner is 1, a red and a green as well. For a 3/3, it can't be blocked by creature tokens. So very specific, probably not going to make it into the sideboard because there's other stuff that could be better. But it's a card. Savage Smash is... Look at the art. I love it. This dude is headbutting the crap out of this guard. 1, a red and a green as well. For a sorcery, target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and it fights target creature you don't control. In standard, there's other cards that do it better, I think. Meh. Senate Guildmage is 1 white and 1 blue for a 2/2. You can pay 1 white and tap to gain 2 life, or pay 1 blue and tap to draw a card, then discard a card. This is another one where the abilities feel really good, and it feels like these abilities are significantly better. I feel like some of the guilds got kind of hosed, and some of them got all the goods. these abilities both are good. I mean, they're cheap, easy to activate, and are relevant. I mean, yeah, it's perfect. Seraph of the Scales is 2, a white and a black for a 4/3 flying angel. You can pay a white to give it vigilance, and you can pay a black to give it death touch. And it also has afterlife too. So this is a very good card. I suspect it will be rather expensive. That's my speculation. Shark to Crab is 2, a green and a blue for a 4/4 fish octopus crab with adapt 1 that costs 4. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So having something like this in combination with that mutant that was up there that allows you to repetitively adapt, I think that's pretty good. But I don't know. Fish octopus crab doesn't really fit into any deck unless it's just a +1/+1 counter deck. And I think a lot of those require those counters to go on to certain tribes, like a tribal theme. So I don't know. Shark to Crab seems fine, but I don't know. I don't think it's very good as far as in the competitive format. But it's a freaking Shark to Crab, so who cares, right? Next we got Simic Ascendancy. It's a green and a blue for an enchantment. Pay 1 a green and a blue. Put a +1/+1 counter on Shark to Crab, and he freaking taps something, right? Pay 1 a blue and a green. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy at the beginning of your upkeep. If it has 20 or more growth counters, you win the game. So clearly that needs to go in a deck that is very, very +1/+1 counter centric. But to get 20 counters, my gosh. And to do that without having your enchantment removed, it's going to be hard to do, I think, which is what makes the cost is fine. And it'll probably win some and lose some. It's not going to be crazy. Next, we've got Sphinx of New Prov. 2 white, 2 blues for a 4/3 flying vigilance. Spells your opponents cast that target Sphinx of New Prov cost 2 more to cast. So it's like that tax ability that we'd talked about earlier. No big deal. For 2, a white and a blue, we've got Sphinx's Insight. It's an instant. Draw 2 cards. If you cast it during your main phase, you also gain 2 life. There's other card draw spells that are very similar to this. I think that having the white in there differentiates this one a little bit and maybe makes it so that it won't be used as much. Yeah, that's my personal opinion, man. Next, we've got Sutter Shaman. 2 reds, 2 greens for a 5/5. It can't be blocked by more than one creature, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. So this is kind of feels sideboardy in that Gruul creature deck. And again, like I was talking about before, it gives you an ability that you would normally find on an instant or sorcery, but it puts it onto a creature. So it gives you this ability on a stick and makes it so that you're still getting the outcome of casting an instant or sorcery while having it on a creature body. And if you look at the art here, what the heck is going on here? That looks like a tree carrot. This dude looks like he's standing in some kind of huge barrel wearing a executioner's helmet. I don't know. This one's cool. I like it. Syndicate Guild Mage. My apologies, all you Orzhov dorks. White and a black for a 2/2. Pay 2, tap target creature with power 4 or greater. Pay 5. It deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. This is another one that just feels like it didn't get quite the punch some of the other guild mages did, so sorry guys. Teysa Karlov. This one's pretty good. 2, a white and a black. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So it's like a Panharmonicon for dying. And then creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. So obviously this is it's built to go into the Afterlife deck, something like that. That's what this card is made for, it feels to me like. Is it fantastic? I don't know. Not really. 2/4. But this ability, when combined with Afterlife or some of the other when a creature dies abilities, we'll just have to wait and see. We haven't had enough time to play with the cards and see how they all work out, but it's possible. Could be okay. Theater of Horrors is 1, a black and a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. And then you pay 4 to activate, what's the ability? Spectacle. Essentially, it deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So, let's read this. At the beginning of your upkeep, you exile the top card of your library. It stays there, and you can cast it at any time during any turn that an opponent has lost life. So this, I think, could also be included in that kind of Rakdos burn type of deck, because it just lets you get to more cards, and you could even let those stack up and not cast them intentionally, so that you could then, stack them all together and wreck your opponent, whatever the case may be. Next, we've got Zegana, Utopian Speaker. 2, a green and a blue for a 4/4 Merfolk Wizard. When she enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. Pay 6 to adapt 4. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. This one feels better than the other one that gave trample with the +1/+1 counters. Just because of the cost and the abilities, it just feels like it's a better card, so it's pretty good. Why do they always have to do this to me? What's that say? Zuurta Goblin. Nailed it. Red, a green for a 2/2 with Riot. Pretty basic, pretty simple. Alright, Footlight Fiend is either a black or a red for a 1/1. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Rubble Slinger is 2 and either a red or a green for a 2/3 with reach. Scuttlegator is a crab, turtle, crocodile. It costs 4 and either a green or a blue, or a green or a blue, or a green and a green, or a blue and a blue. Hybrid mana. It's hard to explain. It is a 6/6 with Defender with Adapt 3 that costs 8 in some form of combination of a a green and a blue, blue and blue, green and green, however you want to do it. Freaking hybrid mana, and 6. And then as long as it has a +1/+1 counter, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So it's essentially a 6/6 with a 6/6 for 6. And then let's skip the Adapt 3 for 8, because there's other ways to put counters on it. Scuttlegator's fine. I mean, it is just a common, so that's probably why the cost is up there. I don't know. I want to like it because it's a crab, turtle, crocodile, but I just can't, because everything on it, even the casting cost and the adapt cost, are both very, very expensive. Senate Griffin is a 4-drop 3/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. It's a lot easier to like this than it is this, because it only costs 4 for a 3/2 flyer, and you get to scry 1 when it enters. So obviously it's not a crab, turtle, crocodile, but it's not a bad Griffin here. And then Sizkopa Vampire is 2 and a white or a black for a 3/1 with lifelink. Not bad. Not bad, not great. Next, we've got Bedeck and Bedazzle. Bedeck is target creature gets +3/-3 until end of turn, so okay removal. Or okay smash your freaking face. And then we've got Bedazzle, destroy target non-basic land, and Bedazzle deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So that's a rare, and I think it fits kind of well in that rare spot. That's not bad. And then we've got Carnival and Carnage. Carnival deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and 1 damage to that permanent's controller. For 1, that's not too bad. And it'll activate your spectacle cost. Carnage deals 3 damage to target opponent. that player discards 2 cards. And for the mana cost on those, I feel like I like that, but for the cost, I feel like I like Carnival and Carnage better than I do Bedeck and Bedazzle. I don't know. My bad. Next, we've got Collision and Colossus. Collision deals 6 damage to target creature with flying. Very specific, but a lot of damage for 2. And then Colossus, target creature gets +4/+2 and trample until end of turn. So for 2 mana, that seems good. Consecrate and Consume. Consecrate does exile target card from a graveyard and draw a card. Consume, target player sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control, and you gain life equal to its power. Again, I think all these uncommons are pretty decent, especially for their mana cost. Yeah, not bad. Depose and Deploy is 1 and a white or blue. Tap target creature, draw a card. It's not bad for 2. Deploy is 4, 2, a white and a blue. Create 2 Thopters. Then you gain 1 life for each creature you control. So, in the right build, that's good. That's not bad. I like these uncommons. Let's see what we get. The 4 rare ones here. Let's get this last one out of the way. Incubation. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this one won't hit lands. It's creature only, which is weird because I think normally it's creature or land, but whatever. It's okay. Incongruity is 1, a green, and a blue to exile target creature. That creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token. So that answers a big problem that Simic usually has in not having removal. It lets you exile any target creature. Now they, in response, get a 3/3 lizard, but you're going to use that against something that's going to kill you. So it's better for them to have that 3/3 green frog lizard than to have a Carnage. Oh, you can't use it on a Carnage Tyrant. Dang. Why'd you even say that? How about a Galta? Yeah, it's better to have a 3/3 green frog lizard than to have a Galta. So it does kind of answer that no removal problem. And then we've got the rest of the rares. Repudiate. Counter target activated or triggered ability. Oh my gosh, that's back. Oh, I thought we got rid of that. What this allow was gone. So that feels like a good card. Freaking Simic gets everything. Stupid Simic getting all the good abilities. Replicate. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. That's that. I mean, the whole card feels really good, really strong. We'll see what happens. Revival is for the Orzhov. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's okay. Nothing crazy. And then Revenge is 4, a white and a black. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life, rounded up. That one feels pretty strong too. In the right situation. Thrash is target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. I like that it can redirect to a planeswalker. Threat is 2, a red and a green. Create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample. 4/4 for 4 or something rabid bites something else. Okay. Nailed the flavor, right? Warrant and Warden. Warrant is put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. Warden creates a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx with flying and vigilance. So, not bad. I really feel like these two here maybe are the better of the bunch. And then we got the whole set of the lockets. I'm not going to go over each one. Each guild gets a locket. It costs 3 taps to add either color of mana, and then you can pay 4 in any combination of the 2 colors and sack it to draw 2 cards. They're all the same. Gate Colossus Costs 1 less to cast for each gate you control. It's an 8/8 for 8, and like I said, it's reduced for each gate you control, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less when it enters the battlefield under your control. Whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put Gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. You may, you don't have to, but it feels like an 8/8 for anything less than 5. I mean, if you get just a couple gates out, then this is probably worth it. Glass of the Guild Pact is a 2-drop. Makes multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1. Too easy. Gruul Locket, we already did those. Junk Troller is a 4-drop 0/6 with Defender. You can tap it to put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. So this will kind of help protect you from mill a little bit. I feel like that should be a common. But it is a good defender, I guess. It's at 6 toughness. Got some more lockets. And then we've got Scrabbling Claws. 1-drop artifact. Tap it to, and target player exiles a card from their graveyard. Pay 1 and sacrifice it. Exile. Target. What? Oh. Got it. Got to reread. So you tap it, and target player gets to choose what card they want to exile from their graveyard. You pay 1 and sacrifice it, and you get to choose which card they exile from their graveyard, and then you draw a card. Screaming Shield is pretty cool looking here. It's a 1-drop equipment. Equipped creature gets +0/+3 and has pay 2, tap, target player mills 3. Ugh. And you can equip it for 3. Simic Locket. Alright, Sphinx of the Guild Pact. I like this. What's going on here? I don't know why they do this. Like, why is this gold? Sphinx of the Guild... Oh, that's why. Sphinx of the Guild Pact is all colors. Flying, hexproof from monocolored. 5/5. So, being a 7-drop, I don't know. I don't know how good it is. But I like it. I like that. It's all colors. That makes it fun. The hexproof from monocolored, so like your mono red, mono blue decks are gonna, and if it's hexproof from monocolored, that protects it from spells and abilities. It's not like protection, but you know, it can't be blink of an eye, it can't be shocked and lightning bolted, things like that. Tome of the Guild Pact is a 5-drop artifact. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, draw a card, add 1 mana of any color. So you can see there's lots of fun benefits to casting multicolor spells. And then we've got the Guild Gates, 1 of each art, or you know, two different artworks for each one. So Azorius. And then we gotta skip some here to get down here to Gruul, but we've got the shock lands for the new guilds. So we got Blood Crypt again. We got Breeding Pool. Got another copy, it looks like, of Gateway Plaza, which was from also Guilds of Ravnica. And then we've got Godless Shrine, which is the Azorius? No, Orzhov, sorry. And then we've got the 2 different arts for the Gruul Guild Gates. We've got Hallowed Fountain back. That's for the Azorius. And then we've got the different arts for the Orzhov Guild Gates. Got Plaza of Harmony. This is a rare land. When it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. And tap to add 1 mana of any type that a gate you control could produce. So this will be obviously an auto include in the gate deck I've been talking about the whole dang video. But pretty cool. And then we've got a couple different arts for the Rakdos Guild Gates. I like this one. It's crazy. And Simic Guild Gates as well. And then we've got, finally, Stomping Ground, which is the Gruul Shockland. And that is our complete set review. We didn't do the Planeswalker decks. We didn't do any of the fancy lands. We didn't do any of that stuff. But that's all the cards in the set. If you stuck around for this whole video, I owe you $1. Not really. I can't afford it. Actually, I can because we've only got like... no, I don't want to. But if you did, 100% thank you very much. We couldn't do this channel without you. We really appreciate the support. So, thanks a lot. And I guess we will see you next time. Good luck at your pre-releases. And have fun. See you next time. Deuces.